Welcome back to Radiant Moments. This is part 2 of my conversation with Julie Barth. In part 1, Julie shared her journey through special needs parenting, medical trauma, and losing her first husband, Colin. And we spoke honestly about the invisible, relentless weight carers carry behind the scenes. Today, we're moving into some very tender ground: emotional and financial abuse, the complexity of leaving when you're also trying to protect children, and what support can actually look like in real life, not in a fix it overnight way. Just a gentle note before we begin: if this topic is close to home for you, please listen in a way that feels safe. Pause when you need and come back when you're ready. And you talk to somebody who hasn't been in a caring role, and then you have a hard conversation and you're just honest with them. It's that initial
how dare you? Did you just complain about your daughter throwing up 10 times a day? Oh, poor you. Yeah.
And it's hard space to
the
be
judge
in,
of it.
because then you're like, I can't have that conversation with that person. I can't have that conversation with that person. And I found people found just the idea of the medical journey without having to talk about it, and the amount of people that just walked away. They couldn't handle the reality that we were facing. And that was also isolating, because all of the people that you thought were in your village, poofed, went into thin air and just couldn't manage it themselves. And you don't resent them for managing their own selves and putting themselves into a situation where they can't manage it at all, can't have a discussion. Totally understand. But the pain that I felt when people just left, no word, no nothing, and not because I had done something wrong or I had been disrespectful or rude or I'd stepped over a boundary or anything like that. And so you then kind of internalize everything. You keep it all inside your walls, because if that reality was shared, somebody else would leave. So there was also that fear I found in our journey as well. And I know that you've written about the deep love you have for your children alongside the heartbreak of your first husband's illness. And in those darkest moments, what helped you keep going, even if it was very imperfect during those times?
After Tatum, I had my third child. And I think at that time, everyone was shaking their heads. Like, don't you have enough? Why would you? Because we were really still in the throes of Tatum. But when my second son came out, my third child, he reminded me that life doesn't stop. Because I think a lot of our lives we spend thinking, well, I'm just going to buckle down. I'm going to take care of this situation. When this is over, I'm going to rejoin life. I'm going to do these things. I'm going to, and you just, it's almost like the caveat. Like, well, if I just sacrifice all of this right now, there'll be some day when greener pastures will come, I'll vacation and I'll retire and blah, blah, blah. And we all do it to a certain extent. But when he came along, my son, just the sheer joy of nothing, the fact that he didn't have a trach, the fact that I heard his first sound, that reminded me that you can't stop living. And you do to a certain extent, but you can't stop seeing joy just because you have bad. And I think it's always been my children that have picked me out of that. And like I said, there have been many people in my life who've said it to me, like, or I've heard, I can't believe she's having another child. Because from the outside, it probably looks very irresponsible. It looks like you are somehow not giving your children what they need because you're inviting another person that's asking more of you. But that's never been an experience. I often think if I did not have more children and decide to carry on and continue on as if, okay, I have a special needs kid, that's great. But that's not going to be my life and my world. I'm not going to define myself by that. I'm not going to put all of my energy off, because if you do that, it doesn't only take your joy. It smothers the child. I could spend every day at the doctor's office with her. To this day, people will say like, oh, well, she should really come up for a checkup for A, B, and C. And my answer is like, okay. In the back of my head, I'm thinking, no, we go to the doctor, something's wrong. I have doctors. What do you mean you're not being proactive? And I think, for what? Why are we trying to preserve life if we don't live it? And that's always been my philosophy on all of it. If you're just living to live, to get to the end of the day, to not have something disastrous happen, then you're not living. I think that's just always the way that I looked at life. Even when Tatum was a baby, I remember them saying she had a trach and I would take her to pools. People like report me like, oh, she has a trach, she could. And I'm like, every day that she is alive is a blessing. And if she didn't make it another week, then I'm going to make the week before she doesn't make it the best week of her entire life. And I guess because of so many things in my world, that's kind of how I've always operated that, yeah, things are bad, but why make them worse by focusing on it? And it is hard because people do step away from you. And although you said I didn't do anything, I think there's always that part in the back of your head thinking, well, I'm really not fun to be around because I am stressed all the time. And I did lose my temper. And I was short with that person when all they were trying to do is like stop over. And yeah, is it your fault for being short tempered and do it? Maybe. But if anyone had any idea of how much you really want to fall apart and how much restraint you really are putting on it and the way you are judging yourself, it took me a long time to recognize that it wasn't me. People weren't stepping away from me. People don't like to be in uncomfortable situations, and it makes them uncomfortable. And it's a lot easier for them, again, to say something along the lines of, well, if you need anything, let me know. Or, well, I'm always here if you need something. Because that absolves them of, okay, well, I haven't talked to them in a month, but I did tell them if they needed anything. They know I would be there. They know if they need something, all they have to do is call me. But it's not a reality. And it does excuse people who step away and think, well, they know.
I told them.
I asked if they needed anything. And the last time I called her, she seemed really stressed out. So I don't want to.
And the other thing is people, if they wanted to be there, they'd be there. They wouldn't have to say, call me if you need me. Because if they understood that there was just no brain power to think about, I could ring Kathy and Kathy could do this for me. Or I could ask her over for a coffee. There's just no bandwidth for that additional work because it's mental load, having to do another task when already with everything that we go through, it's already laden with tasks. There are so many tasks on tasks and every day there's a new task that gets added that came from left field and you're like, why? My day is full enough. Why?
I want to be the bearer of bad news. I just felt like everything in my world was hard. It was hard. And when I was around other people, I didn't want to talk because, first of all, I couldn't relate to them anymore. It's like when you're pregnant and everyone else is drinking and you're like, I don't speak this language. You don't want to throw up all your anxiety because, first of all, you're like, okay, I finally got away from it. I don't want to talk about it. Secondly, if I talk about it, I'm going to bring the whole room down. Third, I don't want people to know how bad things really are. So you just kind of sit in, you're there for an hour and you're like, okay, this is great. And then you go home and you even feel worse because you're like, okay, that was supposed to be my time away. Not only was it not time away because I was worried about what was going on at home, but I recognized that I no longer fit in anywhere. I don't have friends anymore. I don't understand. I resent them because their lives are easy. Then I feel bad that I resent them because it's not their fault that their lives are easy. So kind of the same bag of emotions. And then the more you push away, the more they're like, well, I haven't talked to them in a long time. And then it's uncomfortable and you see them and they're trying to excuse the reason that they haven't called and you're trying to let them off the hook because if you confront them, they're never going to call you again. You just live your own little world and you try and convince yourself that it's not as lonely as it really is.
And the only thing you have to share is about that medical journey because you've lived it day in, day out 100% of the time. And you're like, I don't have anything outside of that. It's hard to become a part of the conversation because you've got nothing that you could share or say or be a part of. So my next question would be for someone listening who feels like they're supposed to be strong for everyone else and doesn't feel like they have permission to grieve or admit that it is hard. This journey is hard. What would you want to say to them?
I think the most important thing, first of all, again, is to recognize that it's not you. Don't internalize it. People are not avoiding you. They're not avoiding your personality. It's nothing that you've done. Secondly, I think you are not going to be able to talk to everyone in your world. You are going to have to let friendships go if they don't serve you well. It's not your responsibility in any relationship, whether that's an abuse situation, a friendship. It's not your responsibility to hold up both ends of a friendship. If it feels like that, then it's not a friendship. And I would say, even though you don't want to, you're trying to avoid it. There are people and you don't want to push more people away by being honest. Find that friend or two friends that you know you can unload on and tell them honestly, listen, I know this is a lot, and I know I'm asking a lot of you to go through this with me, but I'm feeling very alone and I just want to vent. I know you can't fix it. I don't want you to feel bad about it, but I just have to let it out. And I need you to know it's not directed at you. You're going to have some heavy shoulders here, but I need you as a friend to just listen. And it's okay to tell me it sucks. In fact, I want you to tell me it sucks because everyone was always so adamant on trying to convince me that it didn't suck. If you said something, they were always trying to present the positive. And I get it. That's what a friend's supposed to do. They're supposed to show you the positive and make lemonade out of lemons. But there are times when you don't want someone to give you the positive. You want them to acknowledge that it sucks for you just for a day. Just let me let it suck for a day. I had this conversation with a very close friend last night. Chaos in my house, and I was talking about a door that wouldn't stay closed. And he was going on and on about fixing the door. Well, we can fix the door. And I finally said, this isn't about the door. The door is not fixable. Because if it's not the door, then it's the kids or it's the dogs. I don't need a fix. I appreciate you wanting to fix it. I'm not looking for a fix. I'm just looking for someone to sit, listen, not judge, not feel bad for me, and tell me it sucks so we can move on and I can go about my day tomorrow feeling less sucky than I do right now.
I can put my face back on. I can put my mask on and I can keep putting one foot in front of the other. And I think
because I feel heard. I'm tired of being invisible and having everyone try to convince me that it's not as bad as it is.
you want to feel seen, you want to feel heard, and you want to have just a breathing
And
space.
understood.
Yeah, to be understood and for it to be okay to take that breath and go, today is just the worst. Last month has been the hardest of the entire year so far, and we're only in January. I just need you to say, yes, I agree with you. It has sucked. And that's it. I don't need you to fix it. I don't need you to cotton ball it. I just need you to be raw with me in this moment. And I think that's hard for a lot of people. And something that I've discovered is that I really need to ask, do you have space for me? Like right now for yourself, if I was to just, do you have space? Do you have space for me to be verbally meltdowny with you and just have you reciprocate the safety I need? And there are people that have that space, and then there are people that don't. And as time has gone on, you discover those people that do. And it's really hard to
It is.
be that vulnerable in that space and then come back the next day and like pull yourself together and one
And
foot in front of the other.
you don't want to unveil yourself to people because you're feeling that way in that moment, but that is not your takeaway. That is that moment. And you don't want that moment to cloud your world forever or for someone else to let it cloud how they see you.
100%. And I wanted to gently move into a part of your journey where you've also been very honest about the emotional and the financial abuse you've experienced in your second marriage. And I know this is tender ground, and I want to honor the courage that it takes to talk about this. So many carers are living some version of this behind closed doors. There is statistical information about carers and being in domestically violent relationships because of the added pressure, like a pressure cooker, on the relationship that brings out these intense and at times aggressive behaviors, often minimizing it or feeling too ashamed to name it. When you think about your second relationship, what were some of the subtle early signs of the emotional or financial abuse that you now recognize as red flags that you didn't back then?
Well, I think when I met him, I had gotten to a space where I didn't want to talk about anything. And everyone else in my life, I think, who knew what was going on or cared about me was trying to get me to talk about stuff, open up, deal with it, process it. And he never wanted me to talk. It was like, "You don't wanna discuss anything? Okay." And where that was very alluring at the time, like, "Oh, you mean you're not gonna push me to talk?" And I thought he was doing it for my benefit. I quickly found out, almost too late because I was ingrained, that he really just didn't care. He didn't want to hear my problems. He didn't wanna share my problems. They were a bother to him.
Mhm.
I was a means to fulfill his needs. And I think when you're coming off of losing so many people, because when you go through hard times, unfortunately, I always say that if somebody had come to me a month before really it all fell apart, the people that they said who would be there for you, the people that I would have named were the first people out, which was so shocking to me. The very people that I thought would never leave my side were almost the first people to abandon ship. So when he came along, I was afraid to put anything on him too, because I didn't want to lose him too. I mean, I'd lost my friends. He was very supportive of us picking up, leaving everyone behind, leaving family, moving across country, letting everybody be in the past, just communicating people, where I thought that that was very liberating. I thought, oh, good, I could start over. I don't need these people that have been in my life because they want me to do stuff I don't want to do, like feel stuff. It wasn't until I got where I was at and recognized that it was by design. He was purposely trying to separate me from any support, any common sense, anyone that would have questioned him, questioned what I was doing, asked me the real hard questions and made me stop and look around and say, hey, wait a second. I don't deserve this. As long as he had me away from people who knew me best, people who have been there throughout my life, people who would be honest with me, then he could say whatever he wanted and I'd never challenge it because he was the word. He was everything to me. He was all I had. So no matter how nasty he became, no matter how much he manipulated me. And in these situations, people will say, like, in their head, they'll justify it. Well, he didn't ever hit me. He didn't ever lay a finger on me. He doesn't have to. And unfortunately, just because he hasn't yet, or she, this is not just a male thing, just because they don't, the more that you become numb to something, the more that you dismiss something, the more violent they have to be, the more nasty they have to get a reaction from you. And when I finally got to a space where I was just numb, okay, you don't want to come home, fine. And he was always pushing the envelope to get me to react, because if I reacted, then I would see a side of myself that was embarrassing and shameful. And I would be like, oh my, I'm insane. Like, who behaves like that? And then I would gaslight myself, and then there was be this apology phase. But the quicker the recoil was, the more numb I became to it, the meaner he became. And eventually it always does turn physical. I don't care who you are. I don't care what situation you're in. It necessarily, by design, has to go from verbal to physical abuse for them to maintain control. So, you will convince yourself 10 different ways this is manageable. I remember you said something about, like, there's good times. The good times become so not even good anymore. They just become like, I had a normal day today. Things are great. That you begin to overlook how truly cyclical and crazy. They're chaos makers. And you begin downplaying it to everyone. And then when you downplay it for everyone else, you downplay it in your own head. And the devil especially if you're in a situation where everything around you is unpredictable. You never know what the next day is going to bring. And special needs on top of something like this, you need predictability. And even if it's predictably horrible, you feel like it's manageable. And if you step outside of that, if you do something other than trying to maintain, it is so terrifying that you think, how could it get any worse? It will get worse. And I can't even imagine what worse than this is. So I'm just going to manage and maintain.
You're so correct in that it escalates and the apologies get bigger.
Smaller.
Well, that's
Or
right.
they go away. Yeah. They stop apologizing.
And the cycle gets smaller and smaller until we get to a point where it's like, I'm done. And then
That's when it becomes really dangerous. Yeah.
you can't say that. You can't say, I've had enough, I'm out, I'm done, because that in itself has this layer of fear for not only yourself, but your loved ones as well that you have in your care. The months of planning that have to go into safety and leaving, that it's not just, right, I hit my breaking point, you can go and leave right now. That's not how that rolls. especially when financial elements are involved and emotional, and the doubt that you have that I'm never going to be loved. And you have to fight with all of the emotional, psychological abuse that has gone on that's built up to this. And I guess looking back, what do you wish you had known earlier about protecting yourself emotionally and financially in this new relationship?
Well, I think what's really important in what all that you were saying is I think a lot of people think that the barriers to leaving are in your head. There's this impression from a lot of the conversations that I've had, both about myself and about other people, that you are putting barriers on all of it and it's all in your head. If you just want to leave, you can leave. And what they don't understand, and this is an American system that I'm speaking of, but I'm sure it happens to some degree, is it's not just that you can leave because you're not going to be able to separate that abuser from their children. I had little kids, and I knew that if I left, because I always was able to put myself as a buffer between him and my children. He was never with them without me being around. He never took them anywhere because he was an alcoholic. And if he got in the car and drove, it would terrify me. And they were too little. And I knew if I left, I would have to let him take them without supervision, without me, without the buffer. So I stayed in it. And I think that people don't understand that the dangers are real. They're not imagined in your head. It's not as if you leave and then you've got a row of supporters to help you, because by the time you leave, you've left all your family behind. You've behaved in ways that you don't even know. They're telling everybody you're crazy behind your back. They're building a case against you. So you try to leave. You not only have no supportive people, you don't know which side anybody's on anymore, but then you encounter an entire justice system that further victimize your abuse. Well, where's the proof, really? Because that text message, you were the aggressor in all of that, not knowing the backstory of it. And on top of it, he was recording everything. He was planning and plotting. So when we did actually go to court, he had text messages from 5 years earlier. He had video recordings. He was sending my text messages out in chains to his friends. He would get me to admit things when I was in the heat of a battle and in a meltdown, things like, oh, you're right, I need counseling. There you go. It was recorded and it was played back. She needed counseling. It was taken out of context. So the barriers that I think people see as weakness and see as if, oh, you're creating this in your mind, or if you really wanted to, all you have to do is get out of the situation and you're safe. I would say that that is not the case, and you don't find out until you're not there. And when you get on the other side of it, you do recognize and see how truly impossible it was, and give yourself a pat on the back, because getting out of it is necessary. There's no other way, but getting there is terrifying. It takes so much courage. It takes more than anyone will know, and not just in your own head. It takes planning. It takes plotting. So when you ask me, one of the things I'm the biggest proponent of and what my charity is based on is we tell sports athletes, like, if you want to go into professional sports, you need a backup plan. And nobody says like, well, that's stupid. Why? But we don't tell women that. We don't say like, okay, it's great that you want to be a mom. It's great that you're going to be a stay-at-home mom. It's great that you're going to take a second income and only work part-time. Well, we don't tell them, but make sure you have a backup plan. I had the best marriage, the dream marriage. I mean, if he had not passed away, I believe we would still be together and supportive of one another right now. But you just don't ever know, whether that's divorce, whether it's illness, whatever it is. Don't ever assume that the person that you're with is going to share the responsibility when things go bad, or that they're going to be there to pick you up. Because when it all falls down, the only person that you really can rely on is yourself. And that goes for every situation in your life. And I don't know why we don't foster that in women. It's somehow like selfish if you want your own bank account. It's selfish if, you're going to put money away for yourself. But the only way to protect your children is if you protect yourself.
100%. It's so important because we have backup plans for our children when they
We
have.
have backup plans for everything,
That's correct.
but not ourselves.
No.
Because then, as if like we're dishonoring our marriage and our commitment and our vows, because we promised to be there through thick and thin and for life. So if I somehow plan for that not to happen, and I'm not fully committed to what I said I was, that this is forever and this is, for life, and we're going to be partners for life.
And I think a lot of people who are in the situation where they have an abusive relationship and they are caring for others, it's hard to name it. because there's so much going on and there's so many things that need to fall in place. And even planning and trying to find the right way to do it and doing it safely so that if they were to walk in and you were talking to someone about leaving, that you had a safety word so that they knew that they'd walked in without it being super obvious that you're changing the tone or direction of the conversation. And I think women or men who are in a relationship where domestic violence is rife, they can't voice it. It's embarrassing. How can I have let this happen? How do I let somebody treat me like this? And unless you're in the thick of it and you've lived it or you're experiencing it, it's hard to name it. It's hard to acknowledge it. It's hard to go, I made a mistake. This is not right. I need to make a massive change. And it's scary because it follows you afterwards. If you have children and that person is still alive and they're still able to continue the abuse after separation.
It's not as if you leave and they just say, okay, well, I'm glad that we were not together and I don't need to control you anymore.
No, that's not how that happens at all.
In fact, they will use your child to make your life miserable. And the more you try and make things okay, the more they work hard overtime to sabotage it.
100%.
So you're always on defense, always on defense. I remember after 3 years and being told I couldn't get sole custody and, being called a drug addict and an alcoholic, all the things that he was. I remember one day I just said, I'm not playing defense anymore. I'm striking first. And it was terrifying. And I still sometimes sit back and think, I can't believe I actually did that. But I went to the court and I asked for an order of protection. Even it coming out of my mouth, I thought, is he really going to come hurt you? You're asking yourself, do you really want to make it this big of a deal? Do you really want to make this public? Do you really want to expose what you've put up with, what you've done, what's going on behind closed doors, what you've subjected your children to? Do you want to make that public? And it's like somebody is holding you ransom for your behaviors or what's going on. Or if you tell someone, you're not only telling on them, you're telling on yourself.
That's right. And a lot of experiences here is that you don't have bruises.
How are you going to prove it? In fact, you look like the aggressor. I looked like the aggressor because all it took was one trigger word toward the end for me to just explode. And from the outside, because you're forced to hand over text messages, I will read some of my text messages and think, what on earth was I thinking? That doesn't sound like me. Why would I do that? Why would I beg? Why would I kick out then beg back? What was going through my mind that is a rational way? But it wasn't. But here it's exposed to the entire world. And how are you going to explain that unless you have to admit, I'm crazy. I clearly am crazy. But they don't know why you end up crazy.
And the thing is that they also don't understand that it's reactive. It's from being beaten down and down and down and down physically, emotionally, mentally, financially, whatever the element they're using against you is, that it has been going on for years. And now you've realized
it's the frustration. You just can't, no matter what you do, you're stuck. And feeling stuck, it's the worst form of torture. Through everything I've been through, Tatum, Colin, and I didn't even mention that Tatum got cancer after Colin died. But after all of those experiences, I would honestly label dealing with the emotional abuse, the confusion, the frustration, the way that it robbed my joy was the hardest thing to get out of because I had to take responsibility that I made conscious decisions to get there. I didn't do anything for Colin to get cancer. I didn't do anything but I made the decision to go away, to get married, to leave my family behind, to allow, this person into my life, knowing in the back of my head the entire time you asked me what red flags are, he was a walking red flag and I knew it. But I just kept on doing it.
I wanted to say thank you for being willing to name those patterns. I think a lot of listeners will hear things they've felt but never had language to actually apply to it. So thank you so much for being honest and raw with us, especially about such a fire subject. like domestic violence. And we've talked about the weight and the warning signs, and I'd love to move into gentle, realistic steps, not in a fix everything overnight way, but in a what's actually possible from here way. For women listening who are in crisis, emotionally, financially, or in an abusive dynamic, what are some of the first tiny steps that she can take or he can take towards regaining stability and independence?
My first suggestion would be step out of it, find a third party. Don't go, even if you think it's your best friend, go to a third party. Because first of all, you're not going to believe the advice of your friend. You're always going to wonder, what do they know? Because I got to a point where I was like, what do you know? What have you heard? And whose side are you on? Also, you want to go to a third party because you don't want it to get dangerous. You don't know who is listening, what's going to get back. You just need to go to a third party, whether that is a counselor, whether that is a financial person, whether that is a lawyer consult. Taking the first step really is stepping out of it to get an outside perspective, because as long as you're stuck in it with the regular players, with people who know you, no matter what you say, they've already formed an opinion. No matter what you tell them, they're going to say, oh, well, she said this before, but she's going to go right back to it. So they're not going to take you seriously. You need to step out of it, find a third party that you can trust, even if you think it's not going to get dangerous. I remember my ex-husband, we'd get into arguments toward the end, and he would say things to me like, this is getting dangerous. And I would say, like, really? I don't know what you're talking about. Because in my perspective, I had no idea what he was talking about. We were arguing. Did we fight like violently? No, not really. But I recognized that it was getting dangerous in his head. He was having thoughts of really probably killing me, but I didn't know it. So even if you think it's not going to get physical or dangerous, don't take the chance that it will. Step away, talk to somebody who doesn't know the situation, tell them your truth, and take their advice about what it looks like to have an action plan. Not long term. If you needed to leave today, make sure that you have an action plan. And especially with a special needs situation, that takes a whole lot of orchestration. You can't just pick up and leave. You've got to pack a whole bunch more than just a suitcase when you're dealing with that. So I'm not saying that you have to leave. I'm not even saying that you're to the place where you're ready to leave, but just make sure that you have a plan if you should have to leave, and involve a third party that you know you can run to.
It's so important to have the outside, because even in your wildest dreams, you don't know what type of connection your friend has with your partner or their partner has with their partner. Because in those experiences, people share. Even if you're like, please keep this to yourself. If they have a partner,
Don't tell anyone.
That's correct. If they have a partner, they're telling their partner, because their partner is their person. And if that person is the best friend of the other person, so you have to look at it as if everyone is a potential bomb waiting to go off. And you need someone who has a required legal confidentiality, and they can't share, especially while you're still there. Especially whilst you're in it. It's such an amazing piece of advice to go to a third party to get help and support. And I know that through the Colin James Barth outreach, you're now supporting women-led households in crisis. What does that support look like in practice? And what gaps are you trying to fill that you wish you had been there for you?
When I started it, I think we've kind of changed the tone to not be crisis. There are so many organizations out there that you can flee your home. I mean, if you have to, if things are dangerous, you can flee. My experience has been in both my situations when I've had to rebuild, you go to organizations and they're like, well, you have savings, you're fine. When you don't have anything, you come back to me. And it shouldn't be that way. You shouldn't have to slip into poverty before someone's like, oh, you have nothing. Great. We're going to help now. So when I first started, I wanted to do mortgages and childcare and give people all the things that they needed. But when I first got into it, people would say, from a small town, and people would say, the Combi Center provides that, or so-and-so. And I was always, as a charity, dismissed like, oh, there's already people out there that do that. So that really intrigued me, because if there is, I've been in that position twice, I haven't found them. So if they exist, then they don't exist if you don't know that they're there. So what our organization has shifted to is, first of all, the language is we are helping women in struggle. not in crisis. We don't want you to get to crisis. That is what the problem is, that you have to hit crisis before anyone will help. We want to help you when you still have something left to give so that you don't have to rebuild. Our organization operates similar to a concierge service. So we're building databases of all the available services that are out there, small, large, so that when you come to us, we get you where you need to be. We know what you're eligible for so that you don't have to research, so that you're not filling out applications to be turned away or finding out after filling out 2 days and meeting with them, sorry, you're not eligible. So we're trying to categorize all those things, get that in place that when you come to us, we say, fill this out for your mortgage, fill this out for, and then for whatever else there isn't, that is where we want to be the canopy. So right now, most of it is organizational and administrative. What we do offer mostly at this point is mentoring and helping people be that third resource. I think that as women, we are very good at tasks. I might not be able to devise a bomb, but if you give me all the pieces and a roadmap, I got it. I'm on it. And I think that that's what we try and provide. We try and provide a roadmap so that you can break it down. It's manageable. We tell you, do this, this, and this. Okay, I can do that. Now that I can see it, now that it's written out, I can do that. I'm right there with you. It's the enormity of all of it that gets people stuck and it gets them hung up. And it's why you slip into poverty, because you're just trying to get to the end of the day, putting things on credit card because you just figure, I can't deal with that right now. And then you just end up in a, heap of trying to recover. And it shouldn't be that way. Women work so hard. Again, that's my experience because I am a woman. Women work so hard as mothers, as caregivers, as sacrificial lambs, that we shouldn't have to lose everything we've built, almost gnaw off our leg to try and get away. It shouldn't be that way. You shouldn't leave with nothing. You should leave with your integrity. You should leave with a support, and you should leave not running, walking away and feeling confident that you can make it.
Yes. And I love that you're emphasizing both safety and self-compassion. It's not about leaving, it's about not leaving yourself behind in the process, which I absolutely love. And I also love that you've been able to adapt your service and your charity to meet women where they need you. And I think that is simply beautiful. And on top of your advocacy and your charity work, you've also written a beautiful book called Notes from a Blackberry, with, I hear, another book on the way.
Yes. The first book that's out is Notes from a Blackberry. It was written, I would take Colin to chemo. We had 4 little kids and I had a Blackberry, and I was just coming off of the craziness that was Tatum. I'd bring her in for a cold. The next thing I know, she was flatlining. So when we talk about, I call it throwing up on people, throwing up my emotions on people. So the nurses would come up and they'd start to talk to me. And I found myself literally like, oh, and then he didn't really want me to talk. And I had a Blackberry. So I started writing our story, because I knew that realistically my children would probably never meet him and I wanted them to know him. So I wrote our story, then we flowed into Tatum, and then it was real time. So it goes from where we met to dealing with Tatum to the end of the book is the last days that I had with him. I would email it back to myself and I pieced it all together, and it sat on my laptop for 12 years. And after coming out of the divorce, I finally had the courage to read it. And I got to the end of it, and as chaotic and crazy as it was, I was like, crazy didn't even start. So I released that book. I've written the second, finalizing it right now, and I'm on to the third. And hopefully the third book will be more self-help or tips or actionable plans, where the first 2 are more my memoirs.
When readers connect with Notes from a Blackberry, what do you most hope they take away, whether they're special needs parents, widows, or survivors of abuse?
Hopefully my inside voice, that's what I call it. All the thoughts, because it is a very raw book. You say that I'm speaking very honestly. My book is about 10 times more, because I wanted people to know that everything they're thinking is what we all think, and not to beat themselves up for thinking it. When you're faced with unimaginable situations, you think unimaginable things. You think things you never thought you would, and then you beat yourself up afterward. There isn't a soul in the world who wouldn't wish to never see their partner suffering and wish them gone. I want people, if they read the book and they give me compassion and think, wow, she did everything that she possibly could have to see it in themselves, that they do as well and give themselves a break. If you're willing to give me a break after reading everything I was thinking and doing, and then hopefully you'll be kinder to either someone you know that's going through it or to yourself if you're going through it yourself.
It's a raw account of where
It
you
is.
were and what
Yes.
happened. So, how do you balance telling the truth about what happened with protecting your own emotional well being and your family's privacy?
Good question. I don't think it's a skill. I think it's something I'm born with. I'm able to step out of my own situation and almost pretend as if it's not happening to me to rationalize it. As far as being private, I think privacy goes out the window. I have a mission. My mission is to help people the way that I wish I had helped. If people want to judge me, I can live with that. I lived 2 decades of hiding who I was for fear of judgment. And I suppose in stepping out of it and saying, go ahead, take your best shot. Say what you will about me. Like me, hate me, love me. It will not affect me, but it might affect somebody else. And I've already lived it. I've already felt the sting and the guilt and the shame of it. And I'm okay with me. And if you're not, then that's a you issue. But if I can save one person from true danger of letting someone else diminish your joy, you only have one life to live. I'm willing to do that. I'm not ashamed of anything I've done. I don't have any regrets. Life happens and you have to move with it. And the only way to truly heal is to recognize that if you made the decisions you did with goodness in your heart, with the information that was available to you at the time, it's really easy to go back and say, that was stupid. But if you know you did it for the right reason, then you've got to give yourself the grace to know that you did it out of goodness and forgive yourself.
And I know from what I'm hearing, it's so powerful how storytelling can both be a way of making meaning and a way of reaching back to others who are still in the thick of it to give them the grace for themselves, but also to recognize a little bit about themselves and their story and be able to reflect where in your journey your reflection came a lot later. The opportunity is being given for reflection here and now in that moment, and maybe their trajectory will be that much more different from having the opportunity to see what can be after.
I think many points, I think we can all say, well, if I'd known, if I'd opened my eyes, if I had taken steps, if I had just taken little steps, I hope in seeing how my journey unveils in real time and quickly and in front of you that you can stop whatever you're in before it has to get to that point and salvage yourself before you have to go down a rabbit hole.
We've covered a lot today: special needs parenting, grief, emotional and financial abuse, leaving, rebuilding, and riding your way through all of that. I'd love to close by speaking directly to the person who might be listening with that tight feeling in their chest, wondering if any of this could be possible for them. If you were sitting with one exhausted caregiver right now, someone raising kids, maybe with special needs, carrying grief, and quietly enduring abuse, what would you most want them to hear from your journey?
That they're not alone. They're not the only one going through it. And the only way to truly get out of it is to be honest, not only with other people, but with yourself. Stop trying to push it away. Stop trying to make it okay and act.
It's beautiful because through everything that we talk about, the biggest thing we want everybody to know is that they're not alone. So thank you for confirming that that is such an important message for caregivers and individuals in these situations. For women in crisis who can't see the full way out yet, what is one small compassionate step or question you'd invite them to hold onto this week?
Probably what brings you joy. I think when you're in these situations, it's so focused on keeping it together that you forget that life is supposed to be joyous. So ask yourself, am I surviving or am I living? And then ask yourself, what brings me joy? Rather than looking at all the things that aren't going right, try and focus on what is going right. Because when you turn it into purpose, whether that means what makes me happy, my children, what do they need? They need me to be present. Once you figure out what brings you joy, then you know where your motivation should go and you know where your energy should be spent, not on things that don't make you happy.
Important to find joy. If you've lost your joy, it's important to know what it is and then start working towards finding it again. Julie, thank you for bringing such honesty, courage, and tenderness to this conversation today. I know many listeners will feel deeply seen and a little less alone. We've talked about how complex grief can be when you're also a caregiver, how emotional and financial abuse can creep into already fragile seasons, and what it can look like to take those first steps towards safety, support, and self-trust. If you'd like to explore more about Julie's work, including notes from a Blackberry and the Colin James Barth outreach, I'll have all the links in the show notes and on the website so you can visit when you're ready. Otherwise, go to juliebarthauthor.com. If something in this episode resonated with you, your only invitation is to notice one place in your life where you can be just a little kinder to yourself, whether that's naming what's really happening, reaching out to someone safe, or simply admitting, I deserve better than this. Julie, thank you again for being here and for everything you're doing for women and families in crisis, or as you said, in the place of struggling, moving to a better space. To everyone listening, thank you for spending time with us. Your care, your love, and your very real limits are all welcome here. I'm Michelle, and this is Radiant Moments. Until next time, take gentle care of your radiant moments and of yourself.